Okay.
All right, this is an interview with Curtis McIntyre, New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York, the 7th of August, 2003, at 10 a.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give us your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Yes, it's Curtis Peter McIntyre. I was born in Columbia County, North Clark, July 25th, 1931.
Prior to entering military service, what was your educational background?
Just high school. I graduated from Hudson High School.
Mm-hmm. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Okay. Why did you decide to enlist?
There wasn't really any good jobs at the time for 18, 19-year-old people. That just
Now, when did you enlist?
January. Before January, I was inducted, or I went sworn in on January 15th.
Okay.
So it must have been previous week or so, too. I don't know, before that.
Okay, this was 51 you
Yes.
mentioned. Okay, where did you go for your training, and could you tell us about your training?
I went to, well, first we left the Albany post office and took a train trip all the way over to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and that's where we got separated or assigned. And then from there we came right back through Albany, and on a train, troop train, took us about 3 days to get to Camp Polk, Louisiana. And that's where the 45th Division was there training, and we trained, took basic training there and advanced infantry training there.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were about 20 years old?
19,
20.
yeah.
Was this your first time away from home? Or you had-
Basically, yes, yeah.
Mhm. Did you keep contact at home? And
I wrote to my mother all the time.
Okay. Did you receive any kind of specialized training?
Just an infantry, rifleman training, that's all. It was just maybe advanced, I don't know what, can't remember now. But,
Okay. How long were you in before you went overseas? Or did you go anywhere
No, we
else
went-
after,
we-
after
no.
Camp Polk?
we went to, the whole division went to Hokkaido, Japan.
Now,
And
how
that
did you
was in-
get there? Was it by ship?
By ship, yes. 2 weeks on the ocean. And, let's see, we were in Hokkaido in June of 51, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there we did, the terrain was very much similar to the Korea with all the mountains. And that's where we trained another 4 or 5 months, and then we shipped to Korea. Replaced another division.
Okay, where did you see your first action?
Well, I think it was at Chorwan Valley. I'm not sure. I have books home telling me all the what we companies did and regiments where they were, but I'm not sure. I don't have any of that stuff with me.
Okay, could you tell us about some of your experiences while you were in Korea?
Well, I've spent the coldest part and the hottest part, and it was one time I was out on a patrol, and my canteen had water in it, but it broke it completely right in 2 pieces when it froze. 26 below zero or more, and that wasn't unusual during January, February. It was really cold.
Do you think you were well equipped for that
We
cold weather?
yes, they sent what they call the Mickey Mouse boots over to replace combat leather shoes, and they were an insulated rubber boot, and you could actually, if you moved your toes enough, could set for several hours on an ambush patrol and keep moving your toes, and your feet would stay warm no matter how cold it got.
Now, with those boots, were you able to pump air into them?
No.
No? Okay.
The only problem they had, if you cut them, then the water would get into them and kind of take the insulating factor away. But we call them Mickey Mouse boots. I have no idea what they use today or what it was, but
Do you know where that name originated? Why you call
because
them
they're big and fat and they look like Mickey Mouse
Okay.
feet.
Do you, now when you went over, did you encounter the Chinese?
Yes.
How did you did you work with the Republic of Korean Army much?
Well, they, after about 5 months or so, 6 months, they started putting one Korean soldier to each rifle squad. And then they put another, so that we had ended up with 2 Koreans, South Koreans, in our rifle squad. And the rifle squad consisted of about 8 to 10 men.
What were the relations like within the?
They learned English very fast, and but the fellas all taught them how to swear. That'd be the first thing that they learned, how to swear.
How did they? How did you look at them as combat soldiers?
I'm sure they were very confused, and they just didn't seem to want to fight for their own country as much as what we were doing, it seemed like to me. Now, maybe it was because it was being such a strange going in with 8 other Americans, and then trying to learn the language as quick as they could, because at nighttime you can't tell one person from another, and that's mostly when all the activities took place, was at night.
Did you find? How did you find the Chinese and their equipment and so on?
Well, the Chinese, they always bombarded us with leaflets wishing us a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and please come over, we'll take good care of you, just surrender and we'll take good care of you. We're not mean to to Americans and all this propaganda stuff. But they had a burp gun that fired rounds much faster than our automatic carbines. Or, of course, the M1 rifle is what I had most of the time. And I was with the BAR several times. But I think all in all, their hand grenades, they would throw them. Some would go off. Some wouldn't. I remember one time I was walking back. We had straightened out the front line. It was like in a U shape, and the general wanted it straight across. So we took that particular lane, and as I was walking back one day to bring equipment up to the new locations, hoochies as we call them, is where you're dug in, and I heard a mortar round coming in, and I think it landed about 3 feet from where I was. I'd hit the ground, but it never went off. And so I think they had inferior products that way, that they were either old or just weren't very good.
Now, you said in this forum that you were very impressed with the West Point platoon leaders. Why was that?
I don't know. Maybe they're from New York, and I was from New York. They all seem pretty good.
Okay. Now, what did you consider did you have any moments that you thought were amusing, or any stories that?
Well, yeah, we've had a few things. That one day, this hillbilly, I call him, from Vermont, came over to our hoochie, and we were, like daytime, we just took it easy, and at night we were up all night. And he came over and he's got this hand grenade in his hand. And he said, I just dropped the pin out of it. And he said, there's like 3 of us, and we had a doorway this big. And he comes in like this, and he says, I dropped the pin. Would you help me get it back in? He said, Corky was my name. So I said, sure. So I grab it, and I go to get it, and he drops it. And we all tried to get out of that doorway. But of course, we didn't know it, but he took all the powder out of it. and all it went was sparked, it went pip, pip, poof, poof. And that was the end of that. But that was, I guess, some humor.
Now you said here that during your last month of combat...
That's the only time I really was concerned. I've gone this far without... we went back for 1 month's rest, recuperate, back into reserve for 1 month.
No, that was in Korea?
Yeah, in Korea. I was there for 11 months, so I got combat pay for 10 months of the 11 that I was there. And we went back into reserve, and we got a new general, and he was the one that came up with the idea that he was going to make reserve, make all the people wish they were back on the front line. My reply wasn't direct. If I could have replied to him, I would have. The only time I'm glad to get back to the front line is when I'm way out in front of it. And that coming back, we knew we were going to rotate out of Korea. We had a date already, and it was less than a month, about 3 weeks to go. So we came from reserve, went back up on the front line, and and I was saying, wow, if I can only last these next 3 weeks, then we'll be out of here. And that was the time that I was really, really concerned about making it back home. I think it was young enough before it didn't really set in or didn't matter too much then.
Now, what left the greatest impression on you while you were there?
I think the terrain, the cold weather, it was, all it is mountains up and down, completely up and down. I don't know, I would say the coldness and living like a woodchuck or an animal is what we were doing, because it was, you had to keep warm. We had parkas, and our equipment didn't function too well. M1 rifles wouldn't fire well when it was 30, 40 below zero either. Had a lot of misfires. Stuff wasn't, but the only good thing about it, it was quite quiet. They couldn't do anything either. And you were fighting the cold more so than them. But when the springtime came, it was like places where we'd go on patrol in the winter would become like a bee's nest. You'd be walking right into, because they would be there. But in the wintertime, you could be way beyond there, nothing was around, Because we had contact patrols. Those were the kind that you went out and kept going until you made contact. Have a firefight and then leave. That was, I don't understand what the reason was, but that's what we'd do, just to find out where they were, I guess. And sometimes, I know one time, it was 2 companies were sent around a mountain. One went around like the right side, the other one around the left side, and this is all at night. And a big war started when they met, fighting amongst themselves. You can't tell who's who or what's going on. The strategy, I sometimes wonder what was the strategy, or just to make some of the officer generals look real good as they wanted to get into the combat. I don't know.
Do you recall if you had a reaction or what it was when MacArthur was relieved?
Well, we really didn't get that much news about it, or it seemed like those 3 years I didn't know what happened in sports. I didn't know what happened in politics, or it just seemed those whole 3 years was sort of like in another country or something,
So you had very little contact with what was going on at home?
Yeah, I just wrote my mother. I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have no or any problem, like that. And the only person I wrote to was my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she wrote to me.
Okay. Did you have any contact with black units at all now that
They
integration took place?
That took place while I was in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and we got they're good soldiers. They came right in and did every squad got a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the first they integrated. Of course, was in probably about. Oh, I'm just going to say in the summer of '52 is when they maybe did it. I don't know. All the replacements they came over as black guys. They were good guys.
Okay. Did you ever have any USO shows that you attended?
Yes, I seen PFC Eddie Fisher
Uh-huh.
and Betty Hutton put on a show. That we could come off the front line, only a certain amount could come off the line to go back. So I never seen Bob Hope or anybody like that, but I did see those two.
Okay. When did you return to the States?
It was probably in the latter part of November, because I think I had all of December off.
Of what year was that?
That would be 52.
52. Okay. So you were in the service, I see, until 54. What was your assignment then?
I was sent to the Aberdeen Proving Grounds as a drill instructor.
Okay. After you were discharged, did you join any veterans organizations at all?
Not really, no. I never really did.
Have you stayed in contact with anyone?
Yes, I've kept in contact with several, and just recently got in contact with two other fellows that I haven't seen in over 50-some years.
Have you had any reunions?
Yes, I went to one. They have reunions just about every year out in Oklahoma.
How do you think your time in service changed or had any effect on your life? Or did it?
Well, I think it made me appreciate life. And like when I went to get a job with a telephone company, I knew nobody or anything like that. They told me it's going to be cold, working outside, it's going to be hot, and I just knew that they're not going to anything ever be as cold and hot as what I've been through. And so it was easy for me to, to accept that part of the jobs.
Okay. Do you have any other stories you want to tell us, or?
I really can't think of,
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your interview.
Yeah.